This is the Tech Phantom, and welcome to episode number 8 of this Dark Souls walkthrough. And in this walkthrough, I am using the composite bow, and I am not using the shield. So my only weapon that I'm going to use, that I've been using, has been the composite bow. And in this episode, we are going to eventually make it to Gwyndolin in Anor Londo. The reason why we want to take on Gwyndolin, who is an optional boss, is that Gwyndolin's soul can make a bow. So I wanted you guys to know how to be able to obtain the soul so that you're able to make the bow if you would like. Now the bow does magical damage and it requires a little bit of faith, so we are not going to be able to equip it on this character. And frankly, and I'll talk about this later in the video. Frankly, the bow that you make from Gwyndolin Soul is a little bit of a disappointment. The Dark Moon bow. So we have a much better bow, and we're concentrating the attack of our composite bow on physical damage. So magical damage is going to be of no use to us. But I did want to show you guys how to get to Gwyndolin if you wanted to have that bow. So we are making our way down to the pinwheel boss. Now we don't have to take on the pinwheel boss at this time, but I figured since we're down in the catacombs, let's just go ahead and do that. And we're going to take the shortcuts down to the pinwheel. And there are a couple of different jumps that you can make here that will allow you to get down there pretty quickly. Now, as usual, my equipment includes the Darkwood Grain Ring, which will give me additional evasion, and the Wolf Ring, which will give me additional poise and prevent me from being stunned. And that's going to be pretty important here, both of those rings, because these skeletons on their bone wheel shields, if they hit you, they can stun you, and then they can start spinning, and they will take massive amount of life out of your health bar, and they can kill you. Now, what you're going to be seeing here, guys, is probably the first boss fight where I got really sloppy, and I thought I was really overpowered for this fight. I went in there with power within. You saw that I took a little bit of damage from the fall, and I decided not to heal it. And finally I'm healing here, and I also got greedy on the pinwheel boss, and I took an extra magical attack to the face because I wanted to hit him with an extra arrow. And after I killed the pinwheel boss, I actually got hit by magical attacks from the copies, from the duplicates that he makes, and I was not able to heal because I had that stupid message on screen that I had killed him and that I had obtained the right of kindling. So sorry about that, guys. If you're following along and if your build is anything like mine, believe me, if you play a little bit sloppy than I did, you're not gonna have any, you won't die against the pinwheel boss like I did. And frankly, it's really embarrassing at this point for me to die at the hands of the pinwheel boss. So let's go back to the pinwheel boss and let's get our souls back. So like I said earlier, we obtained the right of kindling, but we're not going to kindle any bonfires. Now the reason we took on the pinwheel boss is because we're down here in the catacombs. Let's just take him out while we're here. And it's not an optional boss. Unlike Gwyndolin, that is an optional boss, the pinwheel boss is not an optional boss, and you do have to kill him in order to get to Lord Nito, which is one of the 4 important bosses that you need in order to access the final end boss. So there are our souls, and we're going to continue forward, and there's going to be a soul item here that I want to pick up. Now, if you're familiar with this area, you won't even have to equip a light source, and we are going to get a light source in this area here. But it's possible, if you're familiar with this area, to go all the way to the next bonfire And from the next bonfire, you can go all the way down to Lord Nito, essentially without stopping. So now that we've gotten our souls back, let's... We have 25,000 souls at this point, and we've also picked up a soul item. So let's go ahead and level up, and we finally have maxed out our dexterity, and our strength is at 27. So we are no longer going to be putting any points into strength or dexterity unless I do so by accident. And that's because the scaling for the composite bow at after 27 strength and 40 dexterity is going to be very, very minuscule, very, very small. You'll hardly get any additional damage to the bow. I think you'll get 1 point of damage for every 2 levels that you put in. So that's absolutely worthless, obviously. So we are going to be concentrating on vitality and dexterity. We're not going to take them up proportionately. We are going to actually do more dexterity than vitality, and dexterity is going to end up at 39 on this character. But if you're following along, you can choose another upgrade path. You can use faith, you can use intelligence, or you can do equal amounts of intelligence and vitality. So what I'm doing here, guys, is I'm trying to open the path forward because I want to pick up the Dark Moon Sands ring, and we need that ring in order to be able to have a confrontation with Gwyndolin. So I'm trying to clear the path of these necromancers, and without a shield, I'm expecting that I might die 1 or 2 times. And there's one more necromancer that I like to clear, and he is going to be down here, and let's see if I can get to him. And there he is, and he's already hitting me from outside where he's at, and I'm in deep trouble here. And there's also a skeleton in this area, so I was not able to take out all the necromancers, but that's okay. We essentially clear the path forward, and there's one necromancer left sort of in our way. There are a total of 5 necromancers, I believe, in the catacombs, and you want to kill all of them if you don't want any of these skeletons to respawn after you kill them. So I always like to kill at least 3 of the necromancers, the ones that I'm showing on this run. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go back to that 3rd necromancer, and we're going to kill him. And the reason we need to kill him is because there's going to be a lever next to him that he's guarding that will allow us to progress to the area where we can pick up the Dark Moon Sands ring. The additional the Dark Moon Sands ring, besides granting you the ability to interact with Gwyndolin, it also gives you the ability to have an additional attunement slot on you. So if you're a melee build and you don't have any attunement slots whatsoever, and you want to have one without having to put points in attunement, you can equip the Dark Moon Sands ring. So we've picked up our souls and our humanity, and we tripped the lever, and that's going to allow us to come up through here and go through this passage that was previously blocked. Now I'm going to hang a left here, and there is an illusory wall right straight ahead that leads to a bonfire, but I don't want to rest at that bonfire. Instead, I'm going to go up this ladder, I'm going to trip this lever, and that will flip a bridge, and that will allow me to go forward. Now I'm going to go on a little bit of a suicide run, so I'm equipping the Ring of Sacrifice, because if after I pick up the ring, I don't care if I die, I don't want to have to come down there. So but I don't want to lose my humanity or my souls, so I have equipped the Ring of Sacrifice just in case I don't make it out alive. But let's see if we can. So there's a developer message right there through that wall that will show you that sort of the way, and you can break right through the wall. And right in front of this casket, where you see the glowing corpse, is the Dark Moon Sands ring. And I've picked it up, and then I've immediately done a homeward bone. So in that case, I was able to do it. In some cases, you are sort of surrounded by the giant skeleton and the other smaller skeletons, and they won't give you a chance to homeward bone out. But I got lucky that time, and I was able to do it. So we didn't have to use up the Ring of Sacrifice, and now that it's done its work, we can switch back to our favorite Dark Wood Grain Ring. So now it's time to walk out of the catacombs, and sometimes if you're in a hurry, this can actually be a little bit of a challenging walk. So what I like to do is I like to come up against the skeleton and get right in front of him, and every once in a while, if you do that, he will jump back, and once he jumps back, there's enough space that you can walk around him. If he doesn't jump back, and he didn't that time, and he started taking some swings at me, what will happen is that the will-o-wisps will explode and they'll knock down these skeletons. So as long as you have enough vitality to survive that knockdown attack, you should be able to get up before the skeletons do, and you should be able to proceed forward. So if you're impatient like me and you don't want to fight your way out of the catacombs and take the skeletons out one at a time, that's the strategy that I recommend. Run up to that, go up the ladder, run up to that skeleton. He'll either jump back and let you walk through, or just hold your ground, and eventually he will get knocked down by the will-o-wisps. All right, and since we're back here in Firelink Shrine, we see that Petrus no longer has his cleric posse with him. Rhea and Rhea's cleric knight bodyguards are not around, so it's our opportunity to take out Petrus. He is a miracle vendor, and he's a real SOB, so I decided to take him out, and at this point he was absolutely no challenge. A couple of shots and he's done. If you try to take Petrus out with the bow earlier in the game, when you don't have as much damage, the fight is going to be a little bit longer. It still shouldn't be that challenging because he's not that tough, but he does have replenishment, so he will cast replenishment and he will hold up his shield. And if you only have a bow to attack him, you essentially have to wait until he puts his shield down to attack you. And he could have replenished his life entirely if he's cast the replenishment spell. So one thing that you can try to do is you can try to kick him out of the replenishment animation. Sometimes I'm able to do that, sometimes not. But if you fight him at this point in the game with, you know, a fully upgraded composite bow and with a good amount of strength and dexterity like we have, he's going to go down very, very quickly after a couple of hits. So we have taken on basically every single boss that we're able to take on in this part of the game, and now it's time to go to Anor Londo. And Anor Londo is a really nice area. Now what I'm trying to do here, guys, is I don't have a shield, and those man serpents are going to take shots at me. So I did a I tried to I parried one, hoping that that will gain me time to go into the cage and not take damage. But unfortunately, another man serpent showed up, and I took some hits out of both of them. So my carefully planned out strategy didn't quite work. So I guess I would recommend to take out the man serpent snakes. That way you don't have to worry about them taking shots at you as you're waiting for the cage door to close, and that's a little bit safer. And I got a little bit lucky there. I guess I am glad that I parried that snake because that gave me enough time to get into the cage. And even though I got hit a couple of times, I was able to survive. If I wouldn't have parried that snake, I probably would have gotten hit one more time and I would have died. So we're going to come up to the area where we fought the Iron Golem and touch this ring. And like I was saying, this is going to take us to Anor Londo. And Anor Londo, to me, represents the second half of the game. And there's a significant challenge increase or ramp up that happens in Anor Londo. The enemies are more difficult, they have more vitality, and also the tone of the game kind of changes a little bit. You go into a more airy, more sunshiny type of an environment, and there's a ton of lore that revolves around Anor Londo. So again, if you're interested in the lore, I recommend that you go check out my walkthrough where I do nothing but talk about the lore of the game, and you'll get to know more about Anor Londo and all of the NPCs that inhabit this place. So there are a few bosses here that we are going to take on. One of them is an optional boss, and it's Gwyndolin. And Gwyndolin is an interesting boss. I was a little bit worried about how to take him on without a bow, and that's because he has a combination of magical and physical attacks. He has one of the coolest bows in the game. He actually has it's like I guess it's a crossbow, but it's a bow that will fire many arrows at once, and they'll spread out in front of you. And if the arrows can stun you, and it's an absolute beast of a weapon. And it's really unfortunate that instead of allowing you to make that soul weapon, the developers instead let you make the Dark Moon bow with Gwyndolin souls. And the Dark Moon bow is a decent enough bow. It has the same range as the longbow, but it does physical damage and magical damage, and you can pair it with the moonlight arrows, which do magical damage, and to maximize the magical attacks that you can do. Unfortunately, the bow is not that strong, so you can actually make an enchanted composite bow, and you can use moonlight arrows, and if you get your intelligence up high enough, it will have a better attack rating. It will do more damage than the Dark Moon bow. And if you're a faith build, it also doesn't make sense to use the Dark Moon bow, because again, with the faith build, you can make an occult, or you can make a divine composite bow, and if you get your faith up high enough, it will outperform the Dark Moon bow. So that's a little bit of a disappointment, because typically soul weapons have the highest attack rating of their type of weapon. So what I mean by that is, for example, the Chaos Blade, which is a kind of katana, has the highest attack rating of any katana in the game. Now, it cannot be enchanted, whereas other weapons can be enchanted, but it does have a higher attack rating than, for example, the Uchi katana, the Iatu, or the washing pole. So I actually expected something similar in this case. I expected the Dark Moon bow to have the highest possible attack rating, but that's not the case. And maybe it's because it does magical weapon. I guess technically it does divine weapon, because it does require a little bit of faith. So I was really disappointed in the Dark Moon bow, and I actually thought that I would switch to it at this point and start using a little bit. The other disappointment with the Dark Moon bow is that the moonlight arrows cost 500 souls, which is a ridiculous amount. So the developers must have thought that was those arrows were overpowered or whatever, because they made them so expensive. But regardless, guys, my recommendation is don't even bother with the Dark Moon. bow and just make either a divine longbow or a divine composite bow if you're a faith build. Now, where the dark moon bow might be useful is if you are not going to, if you want a decent bow, but if you don't want to level up dexterity or faith or strength a lot. So at base level requirements, the moonlight bow is pretty decent, but again, you're still going to need to use moonlight arrows, which are really expensive, and you won't have access to moonlight arrows until you've proceeded a little bit further into Anor Londo. Alright, but enough about my disappointment with the Dark Moon bow, and I guess I'd like your thoughts on this, guys. I'm not an expert on bows, so I could be completely wrong. So the reason I guess I mentioned my disappointment with the Dark Moon bow is that I'm hoping that somebody can prove me wrong and can show me that I'm completely wrong, and that that's not the case, that the Dark Moon bow is awesome. But again, you know, for somebody that has high strength, high dexterity, to me it didn't make any sense whatsoever. Or for somebody that has high intelligence or high faith, it didn't make any sense for me to use the Dark Moon bow, because you can make a better composite bow. Alright, but enough. I think I beat that one to death. So we've come down here and we've taken up on a couple of gargoyles, and now I'm going to equip the Dark Moon Sands Ring. And when you equip the Dark Moon Sands Ring, and as you walk towards the statue of Lord Wind, if you have the ring equipped on yourself, you will see that wall, which is normally a physical wall, a true wall, will fade away, and that will only happen if you have the Dark Moon Sands Ring equipped. So if you continue forward, there will be an area where you can join Gwyndolин's covenant. You can enter the covenant, but we're not going to do that, and instead we're going to proceed straight ahead, and we're going to go through the fog gate, and we will have an encounter with Gwyndolin. And like I was saying with Gwyndolin, I was a little bit worried about the attacks, because his attacks are pretty fast. He has a combination of physical attacks and magical attacks. There is one magical attack. It's a very fast, large ball of magic that fires very quickly and straight ahead, and it's pretty large. And that is unblockable. So even if you hold up your shield, or even if you're hidden behind some of the pillars, if you found some cover, that attack will go through, and it does a really high amount of damage. So my strategy is going to be to zigzag along the long hallway where we're going to have the fight, and to avoid the projectile attacks, avoid the multiple volleys of arrows that he fires with his awesome bow, which should have been the weapon that you can make with the soul. And then when I'm in range and when the path is clear, I'm going to take a shot at him. So the first time you see him, he immediately teleports away. So at this point, I like to buff myself with Power Within. And there's the unblockable attack that you essentially have to dodge. You can dodge it by rolling into it or by rolling to the side. And now I'm zigzagging and avoiding his arrow attacks. And once I get close, I'm going to lock in. And if I'm lucky, I can get 2 or even 3 shots at him, which I did. So then he's going to teleport away. And now he has another magical attack, but this one can be stopped by the pillars. So I was a little bit careless there and I almost died, but I was lucky. I was able to get behind a pillar and I was able to heal. And you see that those arrows just do a ton of damage. That crossbow that has that fires multiple shots is pretty awesome. And it looks like we need to hit him a couple of more times, so I'm going to follow that strategy. And I like it when he rears up, because that means he's doing his arrow attack, which is the easiest one to avoid. and allows you to get pretty close. And here we go. We should be able to pop a couple of arrows into him. And that was all she wrote. That was the Gwyndolin boss fight with the bow. Now, I have to be honest, guys. I made it look pretty easy in this run. On other characters, on other runs, it's taken me a couple of times to get through Gwyndolin. So, the first time you go through, if you don't feel comfortable with Power Within, then you don't have to put Power Within on. You'll have to hit him a couple of more times with arrows, but you'll have more of your life available to you. But for this boss fight, I guess a shield really is not necessary. Again, the shield is not going to help you with the large projectile magic attack. And if you're holding up your shield and stopping his arrows, you're not progressing forward and getting close to him to be able to attack him. So I think this is another boss fight where the bow is a really good option to take on the boss. So because I'm very disappointed with the Dark Moon bow, I'm not even gonna bother making it. And in case you're wondering how to make the Dark Moon bow, what you need to do is you need to take Gwyndolin Soul to the giant blacksmith, which we haven't come up with, but we will visit in the next in a couple of videos. Anyway, you give the giant blacksmith that soul, and you also give him, or you need to have a +10 bow, and he can turn that +10 bow into the Dark Moon bow by using Demon Titanite and by using Gwyndolin Soul. And the giant blacksmith will also sell the Moonlight arrows. But like I said, I was pretty disappointed on that bow, so we're not going to use it. We're going to stick with our trusty friend, the composite bow. And what we're going to do now, guys, is, if you remember, when we went back to the Northern Undead Asylum, we picked up the Peculiar Doll. And if the Peculiar Doll is in your inventory, if you come to the if you stand in front of the large painting in this room, you will be transported to a secret area or a special area. It's called the Painted World of Ariamis. But before we do that, and this is something that I cannot stress, do not forget to pick up the Black Iron set. And I'm going to do that in a little bit here, and that's on this body here. And it's very important that you pick up the Black Iron set before you head into the Painted World of Ariamis. And I'll talk about why that is in a future video. So you stand in front of the painting, and as long as you have the Peculiar Doll in your inventory, you'll be magically transported to the Painted World of Ariamis. So we're going to clear this area in the next episode, and it's going to be a really interesting episode. Because clearing the area is a little bit tricky with the bow, but it's actually a lot of fun. And we'll have an NPC invasion, and we'll have a boss encounter. This is the Tech Phantom, signing off.